You may have heard that my last newscast here at WROC-TV is tomorrow night at 6 p.m. I'm going home to Minnesota to be closer to my parents and my wife's parents. Some of the most impactful stories I've done here are part of our Coming Home series, profiling the challenges our veterans face. In 2012, we followed Army veteran Dan Hoagland for 6 weeks. Dan took a chance on a strange alternative therapy for his problems with PTSD. Dan's story is one of my favorite stories. Retired Army Staff Sergeant Dan Hoagland. 6 tours through Kosovo, Bosnia, Iraq, and Afghanistan. 9 treatments through the VA for post-traumatic stress disorder. Nothing has stopped the suicidal thoughts and nightmares or flashbacks that instantly returned Dan to the life and death situations he faced serving our country for more than 11 years.
You know, I've spent time in jail because of not being able to understand that when a cop puts his hand on his gun, it's not a threat.
That happened here on Dan's farm outside Prattsburg on the 10th anniversary of the September 11th terror attacks. He was arrested when he got defensive with cops called to help him.
I'm desperately looking for something that gives me that added little stretch so that I'm able to say quicker, I'm here, it's all right. I'll be okay.
We were there 6 weeks ago when Dan and his wife Angie met licensed mental health counselor Tom Porpelia for the first time in Rochester. Tom is a Vietnam veteran who has also struggled with PTSD.
That led me on a quest because I knew there had to be something better.
Is Dan Hoagland an extreme case of PTSD?
Absolutely.
After trying everything else, Dan agreed to be part of a study called the Veteran Stress Project to see if this is a solution for PTSD.
I don't see myself as
I don't feel like a hero.
I don't feel like a hero.
This is emotional freedom technique, or EFT. Some call it the tapping solution.
It's based in acupuncture. We're tapping on energy meridians and energy meridian points.
Porpelia and other counselors believe PTSD is a normal reaction to an extremely abnormal event like combat.
It's the body stuck in fight, flight, freeze mode. You're always unaware. You're always looking around. What's happening? Who's happening? Where, you know.
He says the tapping restores normal energy flow in the body, which brings Dan back to reality faster. The talking helps him focus. So, 6 sessions and 6 weeks later. Has it worked?
I'm pleasantly surprised with the treatment. My symptomology went down.
Dan was at the top of the scale used to evaluate PTSD. After EFT, his symptoms have dropped by 66%. What kind of changes have you seen in him?
It seems to be that the bigger issues have gotten smaller, especially when we're faced with stressful situations.
Dan uses EFT everywhere.
And I use it as a tool to deal with things as they pop up. The nightmares kind of quelled. The flashbacks quelled, the anger quelled a lot.
Porpelia's not surprised.
86% of the veterans that come through the research have had significant results and have averaged a 63% drop in symptoms.
But here's the kicker. The VA doesn't widely accept EFT as a tool to treat PTSD.
He's been going to the VA for a long time now without that kind of significant drop in any other treatment. It'd be kind of ridiculous if they didn't consider it.
What needs to change at the VA?
Their mentality, their outlook, their resistance to being open.
EFT hasn't cured Sergeant Hoagland of his PTSD. It is a tool he can use to control it.
It may not work for all vets. It may not work for all situations. But if one vet gets better, that's one more that isn't sitting on the street wondering what he's going to do or thinking about not doing anything at all.
So Tom Porpelia hasn't heard from Dan Hoagland in a while. He has used this EFT treatment on other veterans, and he's putting together a paper right now that he'll submit in the hopes that this EFT, emotional freedom technique, will be more widely used to help veterans with PTSD.
Yeah, certainly. Thinking about Dan Hoagland, what and his service to the country. I remember that story well, one of many in that series, Coming Home. So thanks, Kevin.
We've got a great web extra, by the way, with Dan and his wife, Angie, explaining what PTSD does to families. Also, information on local resources for veterans at rochesterhomepage.net. And the toll-free number to the VA's Veterans Crisis Line is 1-800-273-8255.